How do everybody? For a change, I've got some good news, and this is finally something that's happening, which is making sense. You've probably seen it in the thumbnail and the title, but let's crack on anyway. Biggest expansion of nuclear power for 70 years to create jobs, reduce bills, and strengthen Britain's energy security. Well, why couldn't they have done this 10, 15, 20 years ago, though? I know I said this would be good news. I'm still going to moan because I like moaning. but you know what? No, I'm not going to complain about this. They're finally doing something sensible. It's a shame it's taken us all this time. We supposedly had the peace dividend when the Soviet Union came down. All that money that's been frivolously spent on everything, on things like mass immigration and vanity projects around the world, could have been getting spent on improving the United Kingdom sooner. But you know what? Late to the party is still getting to the party. So congratulations on the government. Now, this is on the HMRC website, so it may not be written in the most beautiful of ways to listen to. But let's get on and see what it says. The government today outlines plans for the biggest expansion of nuclear power for 70 years to reduce electricity bills, support thousands of jobs, and improve UK energy security. I think by 20, in fact, it's got a couple of bullet points here at the top. I'll just go through them. Government roadmap includes exploring a new power station as big as Hinkley C and Sizewell C. UK becomes first country in Europe to launch high-tech nuclear fuel programme with up to £300 million investment into UK production, pushing Putin out of global market. Now, that's good. Like, if the West is actually finally starting to produce its own uranium products for nuclear power plants. That's very important because we shouldn't be relying on places like Russia. And I've always said it's been crazy that we rely on these places, just from a national security point of view. And it's the same with the steel industry as well. Steel is so vital to national security. And the fact that we would outsource to foreign countries to produce our steel for us, I find absolutely insane. The government, I'm not massively for nationalisation, but certain things I do think should be nationalised. And I think steel production should be a nationalised industry, or at the very least part nationalised, maybe to keep it competitive. It should definitely be subsidised, hugely subsidised, or at least like mess around with its tax system, so it doesn't have to pay tax and things like that. Because even things that people don't think about, like overhead cables on the railway, or even the actual tracks themselves. Do you want foreign countries dictating the price that we have to pay for rail, or producing subpar standard, as we saw with where was it now? I think it was Hatfield Crash. I think it was basically, long story short. Anyway, it was in London. I think it was the Hatfield Crash in the 90s, and a train derailed because the rail itself fractured. It had a catastrophic failure, and that was caused by Swedish steel, substandard Swedish steel being sold to us. So it is an actual serious issue, relying on foreign countries producing our steel for us. And then they can also hold you to ransom for the price as well. If you're not producing your own steel or energy, basically they have the power to press the button to stop you importing it, don't they? Or you pay the exorbitant prices that they start charging. Measures such as smarter regulation will help quadruple UK nuclear power by 2050, up to 24 gigawatts, the biggest expansion in 70 years. Thank you. You know what? Finally, they're doing something sensible. They could. I mean, I'm not gonna complain about it. Finally, they're doing this. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant news. In the 2 years since Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the government has doubled down on security of supply to protect the country from price volatility and hostile foreign regime, and bolster the UK's energy independence. It's not like people like myself have been saying this for 20 years, like that. Relying on foreign countries that we've historically always been at loggerheads with is really asking for heartache further down the road, and is a national security threat. It's something like this could have been predicted, isn't it? It's only like this is wholly predictable, and that relying on a totally globalized world is actually asking to have your country held to ransom by countries you don't like. It's almost like you can predict this sort of stuff, isn't it? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that energy security would be a national security priority? Who could have guessed that one, eh? The Civil Nuclear Roadmap will give industrial certainty the future direction of the UK's ambitious nuclear programme, on top of the government's historic commitment to Sizewell C, a world-leading competition to develop small modular reactor technology. I mean, yeah, I'm fully on board with the small modular reactors. You don't have to have big, massive sites. They can be placed in so much smaller areas, and they can also be upgraded far easier. And I believe they're a lot safer as well. These, and I think they might be thorium as well, which is a lot. I don't think thorium has although it's per kilowatt hour produced. It is more expensive. However, the trade-off is that it's a lot safer and it's cleaner. So you don't have the nuclear waste, is my understanding, and there's no risk of a runaway chain reaction, so you don't get a nuclear meltdown risk either, because a thorium reactor can just be switched off in an emergency, and that kills the reaction. But as I say, the offset cost of that is slightly more expensive. However, it's still a damn sight lot cheaper than coal, gas, wind turbines, all that. Still incredibly cheap. And once you've done the expense is the initial outlay with nuclear power, and then after that, the cost is infinitely cheaper. Plans include steps for exploring a GW scale power plant as big as Sizewell in Suffolk or Hinkley in Somerset, which is capable of powering 6 million homes each. That sounds brilliant on paper, having a power plant that can power 6 million homes. Let's say, though, that we do go to war with Russia or China, let's say, or both. And let's say Russia decides to use a hypersonic missile barrage off the coast of Devon to Hinkley Point C. And let's say they successfully destroy Hinkley Point C power plant with that said barrage of hypersonic weapons. You now have 6 million homes without power from one tactical strike, which is it's very, very low investment, so to speak, for the Russians, with a very high payoff for them, tactically speaking. And it's a case of we are putting a hell of a lot of energy eggs into one very, very large basket there. And I think this is also the advantage of these smaller modular reactors. Also, if let's say a multiple smaller modular reactors are hit, I mean, it does become harder for security. So you then have the risk, if you've got lots of smaller sites, though, is that you've got lots of smaller sites to keep an eye on. So that requires more security in that regard. So it's easier for internal security having one larger site, but the consequence of it going down is much, much larger. However, with the much smaller sites, obviously with them being smaller, they are less complex and can be much more easily produced and replaced. And the idea of them being modular as well means that they are very, very it's like having a production line, so to speak, of these parts. So again, you can very easily replace them. So I do think the quantity over quality, and I don't mean, when I say quality, I don't mean quality as in the actual quality of the build. I mean the quality as in how much energy it's producing. You would say it's a larger, because it's producing more, it's of high quality. Not a perfect analogy, I know, but that's the best I can think of right now. As the first country of Europe has launched a HALEU programme, the UK will lead the way from its northwest production hub to provide the world with this form of uranium fuel, with the first plant aiming to be operational early in the next decade. This builds on the ambition to return uranium conversion to the Springfields nuclear fuel site, both of which are critical in pushing Putin out of the global market. Makes perfect sense. And I tell you what, if the Americans are serious about this, they would be very, very wise in backing this as well, for national security, for their own national security purposes as well. And same with the Europeans. The EU really should be getting behind this, and they should be putting a lot of money into it. And I don't mean the EU, the organisation. I mean the EU as in the collective countries. If they are serious about opposing Russia, this is something that they want to get behind. The roadmap also includes a government ambition to secure 3 to 7 gigawatts worth of investment decisions every 5 years from 2030 to 2044 of new nuclear projects. Very, very wise. Very, very wise. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said, "Nuclear is the perfect antidote to the energy challenges facing Britain." It absolutely is. It's reliable, it's cheap, and it's clean. That is what you want in energy production. Those three, and it's safe as well. I know people think it's not safe, but even look at Fukushima. Now people go, "Oh my God, that's awful, what's happened there?" Well, it actually is. Obviously, the environmental damage in and of itself is awful. However, that thing got hit by one of the largest earthquakes in recorded history and got a mega tsunami crashed into it, and it didn't go into nuclear meltdown. That's how safe that nuclear power actually is. That's unbelievable that it actually took that kind of a battering. And essentially, when people think of nuclear power, they think of it as being a potential bomb. And it is potentially, if the worst case happens, but it didn't explode. That's how safe nuclear power actually is. And people were, what about Chernobyl? Chernobyl cut so many corners. Like, there was so much wrong with that power plant. So much corruption going on because of the Soviet Union and the KGB poking their oar in all the time. No wonder that. What surprises me about Chernobyl is how it didn't go into critical meltdown sooner, in my honest opinion. This is the right long-term decision and is the next step in our commitment to nuclear power. which puts us on course to achieve net zero by 2050 and a measured and sustainable way. This will ensure our future energy security and create the jobs and skills we need to level up the country and grow our economy. Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Claire Coutinho, said, strengthening our energy security means that Britain will never again be held to ransom over energy by tyrants like Vladimir Putin. Yeah, absolutely true. And why this wasn't being done before, I don't know. I mean, even Tony Blair could have been doing this, like going back to the 90s. I don't know why this wasn't done sooner. British nuclear is one of the most reliable, low-carbon sources of energy around, will provide that security. We're making the biggest investment in domestic nuclear energy in 70 years. Our £300 million plan to produce advanced nuclear fuel in the UK will supply nuclear plants at home and overseas, further weakening the Kremlin's grip on global energy markets. Fantastic. I absolutely love it. And not only that, it's great for Britain. It's another industry we can tap into. And I might do a story on, they found, I can't remember what it's called, but over in sort of Tyneside area of England, the northeast, they found this vein of a natural fertilizer. It's can be used in even in industrial farming, but it's superior to any artificial petroleum-based fertilizers that are currently used. Now, this fertilizer has been known about. They do find it around the world, but only in very, very small quantities. But it's sorry. I've had a chest infection for over a month now. I've still got the tail end of it. I can't get rid of this last bit of it. I do apologise. But anyway, they've found this. I'll try and find it. It's going to be one of the deepest mines in the world when it's actually finished. But they found this vein that goes down super deep of this special mineral, this farming mineral. And again, that's going to be another massive industry for Britain. So we have got a lot of very positive and looking industries in the future, looking forward with, especially now with this is unbelievably good. They're very positive. And with the new space program that they're starting off, I think it's on one of the Orkney Islands. They're having a launch pad there now, so we can start launching our own rockets into space. It's very positive for the future for Britain. From large gigawatt projects to small modular reactors, the UK's wider nuclear revival will quadruple our nuclear capacity by 2050, helping to power Britain from Britain. Yep, absolutely amazing. And also, we need to be producing a surplus of this energy as well, these products, and selling them abroad cheap. Selling them, even if we just sell it at cost with almost zero profits on it, it just means that we've got secure quality jobs in this country, and we are providing an alternative for our allies, so they're not having to buy from our essentially our enemies. It just makes perfect sense, Just making up. I mean, I'm not saying not make profits at all, because obviously you need to invest in these industries and they need to keep improving and advancing as well. But not like we say Amazon, where they're making these hand over fist insane amounts of profits. Just enough to keep it ticking over and reinvesting into itself to keep the system growing. From a security point, this is a security thing. It shouldn't be about business of pure profit and capitalism. Not that I'm against that, by the way, but this goes beyond that. This is very deep politics, and should be an absolute core thing for NATO countries to be focusing in on and investing into beyond capitalistic reasons. Plans to streamline the development of new power stations and introduce smarter regulation could speed up the overall process and, as a result, the delivery of nuclear power in the UK. This includes allowing regulators to assess projects while designs are finalised, and better join up with overseas regulators assessing the same technology. Sounds like to me what they're looking at doing here is having a streamlined system, and that does make sense about having assessment of projects going on while they're being designed. And that shouldn't be the final decisions, obviously, once it's all fully completed through the design process. Still having your final assessments then, but at least then the people who are doing these assessments are aware of what's going on, and they're not walking in blind, which can then drag the process on for years afterwards while they're trying to get their heads around the whole thing. So at least they're up to date through the whole process itself, whilst going back over things again. But it does require more work throughout the whole process, but it will shorten the end result date, in my opinion. Ministers will bring together the brightest and best from the nuclear industry and beyond as part of a hackathon. Yeah, absolutely. You need to bring in people from all industries event to come up with ideas on how government and industry can accelerate new nuclear projects while maintaining the highest levels of safety and security. But they should be getting people in from the oil and gas industry as well for this, because with what happened with the Piper Alpha and the changes that were made there, obviously oil and gas is massively about trying to be as competitive as possible. I know people don't like it, but petroleum products are some of the cheapest on the planet for per kilowatt hour of energy produced. Um, but they also run at very, believe it or not, they actually run at very minimal profits as well in the oil and gas industry. I know they make multiple millions in profit, but for how much they also spend, it's crazy amounts. So I think getting people in from the oil and gas industry and railway engineering firms as well, and possibly the aviation industry, you could get some very high level people who've got a lot of expertise in streamlining projects whilst maintaining very high levels of safety at the same time. That would be very useful. Now, I'm not saying that the ideas could 100% directly transfer over, but I think they would have some very useful input, which could then be tailored to suit the nuclear industry. These plans will help build new supplies of affordable and clean domestic power, so the transition to net zero doesn't mean higher prices, protecting households from global instability. The government, I mean, this tells you as well about green energy and how much of an absolute farce it's been and how much money's been wasted into that. The fact that they're building all these nuclear power plants as well, because let's be honest, I mean, I'm sat here at home, I'm looking out my window now, it's a cloudy day and there is no wind. Like there is, I can see some trees. I'm looking out my front window now. I can see some trees. There is zero movement happening, even on the smallest branches. The clouds are barely moving in the sky at the highest. I can see. It's not just like a pure flat sheet. I can see a little bit of undulation in the clouds, but it is just one long block cloud as far as the eye can see. We wouldn't have any power being generated today, or very minimal amounts if we were relying on that, especially and we wouldn't be getting enough to store either. So I'm going to leave that here. This is a very long article. I've basically gone over the important parts, which is the government's looking into the funding of this. They've got a long-term plan, which hopefully future governments will take. I doubt any other governments would remove this. They have to be absolutely insane to cancel this. The fact I've gone over the fact that we're going to be looking at producing nuclear products as well for abroad, and I've covered the basics of the national security aspect of it as well. As I say, please go to that yourself. It is on the UK government website, so I think that's probably the best source you're going to get for that from that plan, other than from the nuclear businesses themselves. Please do have a look into it. Very interesting topic. There's, like I say, there's a lot more there to read. Look into it yourself. And speak to your own MP about it as well. If you live in the UK, speak to your MPs about it. Ask them questions. It's always good to know. Anyway, take care. I hope you found that interesting and informative. If you have, please like, subscribe, put a comment below, and fantastic to have some good news for a change. Thank you very much. Goodbye.